Well, good morning, Daily Church. My name is Nathan. I'm one of the pastors here at Daily Church, and today we are in our final week of a 3-week series that we are calling Next, which is based out of the age-old question of how do we handle the next big thing that's coming in our lives? Because the next big things are always coming for us. There's birth, there's death, there's moving, graduations, new jobs, illnesses, on and on we could go. And sometimes those next things are really great. And sometimes the next thing is just not that fun. But in the end, our key verse, Proverbs 27:1, it tells us we don't know. We don't know what the next day will bring. And that lack of knowledge tends to stress us out. And if you've been to church a couple of times, you can probably figure out where this should go. Because the answer is pretty easy. You just trust God. Okay, fair enough. No-brainer answer. Yet for some reason, we continually find ourselves doing the exact opposite. So for this series, instead of looking at how to trust God, instead we've been trying to answer the question, why don't we trust God with what's next? And it all boils down to one word: fear. That we fear what's next. And that causes us to lose focus on God. So let's go ahead and look at a definition of fear one more time, just so we can remember. Fear is a distressing emotion. It's aroused by impending danger, evil, or pain. Whether that threat is real or whether it's all just in our heads. And the frustrating part is we often look around this room. We look at everybody else. They're going through stuff. They seem like they're fine. That guy seems like he has it together. She seems like she's trusting God. And we compare ourselves. And we start to hide our fears. And we feel worthless because we can't get it together and trust God just like everybody else in here can. But that appearance is a lie that the devil is selling you. And I'm going to prove it to you. On the Bible app, really cool article I just read. Do you know what the most shared, most highlighted, most bookmarked verse in America was last year? It wasn't John 3:16. It was Isaiah 41:10. Don't be afraid, for I'm with you. And don't be discouraged, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will hold you up with my victorious right hand. That's what people in America need to highlight, need to remember, need to constantly be reminded of. They all need to hear God say, don't be afraid. Don't fear what's next. I'm here. I've got this. And some of you guys might think, okay, yeah, that's America. We tend to get ourselves a little worked up. Except that's also the number one verse in France, Spain, Chile, the Netherlands, Peru, and South Africa. So that's a little bit of the map. Let's try another verse. How about 1 Peter 5:7? It says, give all your anxieties, all your worries, cast your cares to God, for he cares about you. Now all of a sudden, we're adding 12 more countries, and we're starting to cover some pretty significant map here. But neither of those were the number one verse. Here is the number one verse in the entire world that they highlighted and bookmarked. Jeremiah 29. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. I know what's next. They are plans for good. They're not plans for disaster. They are plans to give you a future and a hope. That was the number one verse in 29 of the 88 countries. And I think, I seriously could go all day with this, but I think you're starting to see the pattern. If you find yourself sitting there and you're asking, well, what type of terrible Christian am I that I'm struggling with trusting God? The answer's on that map. You're the same Christian as everybody else. It's not just me. It's not just you. It's not just America. Fear is what humanity struggles with day in and day out. And the Bible knows that. The Bible knows fear tends to run and ruin our lives. That's why the Bible addresses fear over 300 times. Here are 5 examples of where it addresses fear. Let's see if you notice the theme. Genesis 15, do not be afraid, Abraham. Second Chronicles. This is what the Lord says. Do not be afraid. How about Joel? Do not be afraid, land of Judah. Luke, do not be afraid, Mary. Matthew 28. The angel says to the women, don't be afraid. Now, this is sacred text. There's not a lot of space in the Bible. Why in the world would the Bible repeat the same line over and over and over and over again? It's because we keep doing it. And if that's the case, we need to figure out where those fears come from and how do we combat them. So let's look at the three main culprits. The first is fear that comes from ignorance. And ignorance is simply a lack of information or knowledge. So we don't know what's happening next, and we get all worked up about it, and that fear starts to eat us alive. And if fear comes from ignorance, we combat it with understanding. Specifically, understanding two things. We understand and accept we don't know everything. And it's a toughie to pull off, but we can pop our egos down just a hair bit. Then we can take the next step, which is to understand and accept that God knows more than we do. How much more? Well, 1 John says it this way. He knows everything. And I'm no expert at this, but I'd say everything qualifies as a decent amount. But if we can remember that God knows everything, and we don't, then we can begin to combat our fears of ignorance. Ignorance often combines itself with another thing, though. And that was our week 2 topic, fears that come from doubt. And doubt is merely to lack confidence in. So when we doubt God, we fear because we lack confidence in him to do what is next. And if we doubt God, we discussed this, who is it that we're trusting instead? Yes, us. It's like, God, love you. You can take the day off. I got this one covered. And we handle it ourselves. We take those matters into our hands. It goes poorly. So, we've got fear from doubt. We combat that doubt with faith. And I love the balance here. I love the symmetry. That doubt is to lack confidence in, but faith is the confidence that God is and will do what he promises. And one of the best ways for us to build our faith, knowing that God will do, is to remember what God has done already. So we look back and we remember what God has done in our lives. We look back and we remember what God has done in the people around us, their lives. We look back and we remember what God has done in the Bible. Then we combine all those three, and it gives us the confidence to know that God will do what he's promised to do, because we can see what God has done already. But sometimes that next big thing, it's too big, it's still too scary, it's too intimidating for us. We're still wavering a little bit. Then we take that next step. We just ask for help. James 1:5 says it this way. If you need wisdom, just ask. Ask our generous God, and he will give it to you. He's not going to rebuke you for asking. So taking those 2 steps lead us on a path forward to removing the doubts from our lives. All right, so we've got fear that comes from ignorance. We've got fear that comes from doubt. Our third and final fear area is the big boy. It's fear that comes from worry. And if life's a video game, this is the big bad. It's boss level here. Worry. Let's go to the dictionary one more time to define worry. Worry is a mental distress. It's an agitation resulting from concern, usually for something impending or anticipated. We worry about what's next. We get mentally distressed about what's going to happen. I mean, that to me, that hits the nail on the head. Now, here's the scary part, is when we put these 3 definitions together. And it's shocking how they just create this fear monster that can consume us. I'm going to show you how it works. All right, looking at the definition, something scary comes up next. Then we get anxious about what might happen because we're ignorant to the issue. We lack information on it. Then all of a sudden, we start to doubt. We lack confidence in whether God can control what's next. And feeling God can't or won't control it, it makes us worry. So we get mentally distressed and agitated. And at that point, things tend to go south pretty quick. Because if our ignorance and our doubt and our worry, they start to combine, we think, okay, this isn't working. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and take control. I'm going to figure out what's next instead of God. And then things go south. It's a huge fear vortex that we just get ourselves just sucked right up into. And it can kill us, man. It can kill us. Worry's our big boy because we love to worry. We worry so much we lose sleep. We worry so much we don't eat, or we worry so much we eat too much. We worry so much we can't focus on our jobs or our families or our lives. And the thing is, I'd love to say, well, we just worry about that one thing, or maybe one or two things. That's not the case. We worry about everything, like big things, small things, important things, useless things, what might happen, what might not happen. Sometimes the fear gets so large in our brains, and it gets so out of control and so irrational, it kind of looks like this video.
When the unexpected is staring you in the face, fear is there to keep you safe. With speed and wisdom, fear assesses the situation and settles your nerves in his own special way.
Wait, what?
Almost finished with the potential disasters. Worst scenario is either quicksand, spontaneous combustion, or getting called on by the teacher. What was that? Was it a bear? It's a bear!
There are no bears in San Francisco. It smells like something died in here.
Did you die from moving?
Guys, you're overreacting. Nobody is dying.
A dead mouse!
Ah, great.
I'm gonna be sick.
In the house of the dead. What are we gonna do? We're gonna get rabies! Get off my
Hey, all through the drive.
He's got this. Thank you, fear.
Yeah, so that's us. We get worried about quicksand or spontaneous combustion or about bears in San Francisco, and we live in Michigan. And the thing is, we can all laugh about it, but a lot of the stuff that we worry about is equally ridiculous. I'm going to give you an example. Our wonderful worship pastor, Hannah, she is already working on Christmas. And so to celebrate her awesomeness, her forward thinking, I'm going to do a Christmas example of our ridiculous worry. How many of you, love to see a show of hands, how many of you spent part of your Christmas season worried about what present you were going to get somebody? There you go. Odds are, 7 months later, nobody remembers what you got them. And I can prove it. Do you remember what you got for Christmas 7 months ago? There you go. So we got one person who could, like, I got 4 presents and I cannot remember what they were. So hopefully my parents aren't watching this, because otherwise I'm probably not going to get a Christmas present this year. Because they're like, my mom does this. She's like, oh, I got to worry, I got to get the right thing. And then I'm like, I completely cannot remember what they got me. But I still love them. So, because they probably are watching, and now I'm just getting myself in a hole. Anyway, so point is, all that worry comes for nothing. So perhaps I'd just say, Mom, don't worry about it as much. All right, that's why Jesus said, Matthew 6:24, he said, can all of your worries, just take your entire life, every single worry, mount them into a big pile. Can they add one single moment to your life? And unfortunately, the next verse is not Jesus saying, and scientifically it is proven that worry, in fact, takes moments away from your life. We have to realize that our worries only affect us negatively. Our worries burden us down. So think about the worries you have strapped to your arms and a couple of you to your heads. They're just a simple piece of paper and string. They don't weigh that much. I would have loved it if we could have got pieces of paper that weighed like 40 pounds. I know a lot of you guys will be like, I'm not doing that. But that's how worry is for us in real life. It's not a flimsy piece of paper. It is a crushing boulder that we are trying to lug around. And it either just rips our arm clean off, or we don't ever get anywhere because we're trying to pull half of a mountain with us. So it's pretty clear that we deal with worry on a daily basis, and it weighs us down to the point where it can destroy us. Which means, if worry is that big of a problem, how are we going to combat it? Well, if fear comes from worry, we combat that fear with peace. Peace is the freedom from disquieting or oppressive thoughts or emotions. That's the opposite of worry right there. But how do we get there? How do we find peace? Well, fortunately, the Bible has an answer in a very unique way, because the Bible usually does not do something like, here are 3 easy steps to stop worrying, because it sounds like spiritual clickbait. But in this unique case, there is actually a 3-step process on how not to worry baked into the Bible. This is Philippians. Don't worry about anything. That's our premise. Instead, here's what we do. Pray about everything, tell God what you need, and thank him for what he has done. As a result, then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. Love it. All right, let's break it down, though. Step 1, pray about everything. This ties into last week beautifully. Ask God for help. And we usually do that via prayer. Now, I like one of the things this verse does not say. It does not say, pray about the one thing that you're worried about. No, not what it says. It says, pray about everything. Yeah, it's because God is not a genie in a bottle. You don't rub the lamp and say, hey, God, here I am, grant my wish, I want to get rid of this cancer, okay, thanks, bye. No, God wants you to talk to him about anything and everything, because that's how relationships work, especially healthy relationships. They are based and they flourish on good communication. Then we move on to the second step. Tell God what you need. So again, communication. That's communication is key in any relationship. You've talked to God about everything. And in that everything, you specifically said, also, this is the thing I'm concerned about. Now I'll use Jesus as an example of how this prayer works. Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane. He's getting ready to be crucified. It's going to happen in about 24 hours. So here's what he prays. This is Matthew 26. He goes a little further. He bows his face to the ground and he says, oh, Father, if it is at all possible, please let this cup of suffering be taken away from me. Yet ultimately, I want your will to be done, not mine. I love this example because Jesus does such a great thing that sets the example for us. Now we know Jesus and God, they chat regularly from the Bible. He's off talking to God all the time. In this case, Jesus says, Dad, here's the thing. I'm not exactly thrilled with the whole my skin being torn to shreds by metal-tipped whips. Or like, the whole nails in my hands and in my feet that's going to make blood gush out everywhere. I'm not in love with the crown of thorns being rammed on my head. Oh, and the whole spear in my side before painfully dying doesn't sound too fun either. So if it's at all possible, I would rather go do literally anything else in the entire world. So if you could, God, Daddy, please, I would love it if you could take that cup of suffering away from me. That's what I want. But here's what I need. I need to follow you. Because life isn't about me. Life is about ultimate fulfillment, and ultimate fulfillment is me following what you desire. Jesus didn't want to go through the suffering, but he was willing to do it. That's how we have to take our worry. We tell God what we want, clearly, but we understand that following him is ultimately what is going to fulfill our lives. Whether that makes us comfortable, or if you've read the Bible, so you know 99% of it, it's going to make us uncomfortable. Because that grows us closer to God. I was just in our Monday men's this last Monday, and we asked the question, do you tend to grow closer to God when everything's going well or everything's going poorly? And across the board, the guys were just like, when things are going well, I kind of forget God exists. I'm just like, cool, God. It's when things get rough. That's when I draw closer to him. That's when I become refined. That's when I grow spiritually. So we just come to God. And if we can do those things, we move on to step 3. And this one also builds off of last week. In growing our faith, we said we need to remember what God has done. The thing we often forget to do when we remember is think to thank him for it. This is 1 Thessalonians. Always be joyful. This is our charge. Always be joyful. Never stop praying. This goes back to some of our points. And be thankful in a few circumstances. Be thankful in some circumstances. Be thankful in most circumstances? No. Be thankful in all circumstances. For this is God's will for those of us who belong to Christ Jesus. A heart full of joyfulness, full of thankfulness will help us stop dwelling on the bad things that might happen and instead change our focus to look at all the good things that have happened already. Our pastors have been reading a book about how to make good habits. And this is what we found. That our minds create these pathways out of the habits that we do. And that's why good habits are so hard to form, because we have to make new pathways. And that's why bad habits are so hard to break, because they become deeply embedded grooves. And so doing something like this, starting a new path, it often is hard and it takes a lot of time. But if we can start making those paths to thankfulness, those paths of being grateful to God, those paths of celebration of who God is and what he's done in our lives, those pathways, they will get deeper and deeper and deeper with love and appreciation for God. So if we can accomplish these 3 steps, the Bible tells us we will find peace. This is such a great process. Like, I have done it in my life so many times that you probably could not count. But I do have to say, there's one teeny tiny disclaimer that I probably need to give you. At least in my life. I really hope it's different for you guys. The peace doesn't all come at once, and it doesn't last forever. Sometimes my peace, it only lasts a few seconds before I go back to worrying. I mean, I'm just like, all right, pray, thankful, cool, peace. That feels good. No. And I'm back to worrying again. Which means I have to start the steps over again. And sometimes I'll repeat this cycle dozens of times. In a few big circumstances, I will repeat this cycle hundreds of times for one single issue. But it does work. And if we can begin to remove that monstrous burden of worry from our lives, then we can take a huge step closer to trusting God with what comes next. We started with 5 verses. 5 verses about fear. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Let's go back. Let's see how those verses conclude. And again, let's see if you can find a pattern here. Genesis 15. Do not be afraid, Abraham, for I will protect you, and your reward will be great. Don't be afraid, land of Judah, for the Lord has done great things. Don't be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. The angel spoke to the women. Do not be afraid. I know who you're looking for. You're looking for Jesus. He was crucified, but he isn't here. He has risen from the dead just as he said would happen. God is and will do what he promises. And our last one. Listen, King Jehoshaphat. This is what the Lord says. Don't be afraid. Don't be discouraged by this mighty army lining the fields. For the battle is not yours. It's God's. When it comes to what's next, we have to remember this battle is not ours. It's not ours to fight. We want to fight it. We want to take it away from God and battle it out ourselves. We want to have that control. But the battle is not ours. God's. So with that in mind, let's wrap this series up. The thing that we found is that ignorance, doubt, and worry, they can form a fear cycle that is horrible. But the answers of how to combat those fear combine to form the foundations of us trusting in God. First, God wants us to understand and accept we don't know everything. And follow that up by understanding and accepting he knows just a little bit more than we do. Third, to further help us, he gives us personal experiences and he gives us the Bible to build our faith, to remind us that he is and he will do what he promises. Fourth, if we still haven't taken down that fear, we go next level. We pray. We ask God for help. We run to the Father. We fall into his grace. We ask for that faith. And in his love, he's going to give it. And fifth and finally, we don't forget. We remember to be thankful. And thanking him for what he has done will help us remember what he will do and that he will do it again. I want to close with a passage. It is a beautiful biblical summary of this entire struggle with our fears and looking at what's next. And it comes from Isaiah 40. You can't compare God to anyone. We can't. He has no equal. So tonight, go out, look at the stars. This is just the most recent picture that came in from a new telescope. It just came in this week. Look at all of those stars. This is just a sliver of the universe. Who do you think created them? One after the next, after the next, after the next, after the next, like an army filling the sky. And God knows each and every single one of them by name. It's God's great power. It's God's great strength to put them in the skies. So how can we say that God doesn't see our troubles? Why would we even think that God ignores our problems? Haven't we heard? Won't we understand that our God is the everlasting God? He is the creator of the entire universe. We can't relate him to some human because we all wear out. Even the strongest athlete out there today, his body is going to fail him. But not God. No. He doesn't wear out. He doesn't grow weary. He doesn't get tired. No one can measure how much he knows. It is absolutely impossible. And our God will give you power when you're weak. He will give you the strength when you feel like you can't make it one step further. When you're struggling, trust. Trust in the Lord, and you will find new strength. You will be uplifted. You won't be worn down, stumbling all over the ground, trying to make it a little bit further. No, you will be soaring, flying as high as the eagles. That is the God of what is next. Let's pray. God, who better to build a foundation on than you? That type of power at our grasp, and we try to do it ourselves? We're mortal, we're fallible, we're limited, we're weak, we're ignorant. But you are unstoppable. God, let us turn the next big thing over to you. Let us put our trust in you. Let us remember your goodness. Let us thank you for it. That your praise can forever be on our lips. Thank you, God, for who you are. Thank you, God, for what you have done for us. We are grateful. You are and you will do what you promise. Allow us to remember that and allow us to praise you when that fear is causing us to lose ground. Be our foundation. Be our rock. Be our wisdom. Be our hope. Let us lay our worries down at the foot of the cross. Let us lay our fears at your feet. And I pray all these things in Jesus' name.